Hello, cyberspace astronauts. Are you ready to be entertained with pointless jibber-jabber and senseless small talk? If so, then you have come to the right place. It's the Todd Cook Show, starring Todd Cook, and featuring music by local and national artists. Now, broadcasting from his garage, here is Todd Cook.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2-20 of the Todd Cook Show. Yeah, it's time to get started. I am Todd Cook. This is the Todd Cook Show, and I've got a great show lined up for you today. I'm doing something on today's show that has never been done in the history of podcasting. As far as I know, anyway, it has never been done, but I am doing it today. In fact, I'm doing it right now, and I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. I've got a couple things I want to talk about today on the podcast. One is about, I want to finish a story about the birth of my daughter, Shelby. I want to tell you about a few more things that happened that very day. On the last podcast, I told you a little bit about the things that went on at the hospital and some of the experience on that day. But today I want to try to finish that up for you and let you know a little bit more about what happened that day when my daughter was born. And I want to tell you talk a little bit just about fantasy football. This is not a podcast that talks about sports at all. I try to avoid sports. I try to avoid politics. I try to avoid religion and other things that every other talk show out there, whether it be a podcast or a radio show, I try to avoid the things that they talk about. And instead, I just talk about, my family and anything else that comes to my brain. So I'm going to finish up talking about what happened at the hospital the day my daughter was born. But before I get started, I want to tell you one thing. This is the thing that I am doing right now that I don't think has ever been done in the history of podcasts, ever in the history of talk radio. If it has, I have not heard it ever be done, but I am doing it right now as we speak, and that is this. My wife is gone right now. My 2-year-old son is in his bedroom asleep. My 7-year-old son is upstairs on the computer. I am downstairs right now doing something that no other podcaster has ever done, and that is, as I'm doing this podcast, I am also comforting my 2-year-old daughter. That's right. My wife has gone grocery shopping. I'm here alone. And Shelby, who is just a little over a month old right now, is a little fussy at the moment. She's not ready for a bottle yet, though. We just fed her a couple hours ago, but she's a little fussy. So as I'm doing this podcast, I am also comforting my daughter. Now, I ask you this. Would Adam Carolla ever think about trying to comfort a baby while doing his podcast? Would Mike O'Mara ever think about comforting his baby while doing a podcast? I say the answer to that is no, but I, Todd Cook, will do that because I am the best podcaster in the history of podcasting. Maybe the best daddy in the history of daddying. If there's such a word as daddying, if not, I just made it up. I'm the best daddy in the history of daddying. I'm the best podcaster in the history of podcasters. And if you hear a baby crying in the background, that is my daughter, a little over a month old. Her name is Shelby, but I will try to comfort her as this podcast goes on because I'm trying to break new ground in the world of podcasting. All right, let's get this show started. I want to tell you a little bit more, like I said, about the birth of my daughter. At some point, it was determined that we needed to do a C-section. I'm not going to get into all the details about what happened that day. I'm not going to tell you about what the doctor said or the nurse said. But let's just say that the baby was just not positioned correctly to be born naturally. It was just kind of a little out of position, and they were a little concerned. And at some point, they asked me if I was okay with doing a C-section and if my wife was okay, and absolutely, whatever it takes to get the baby out of there the safest way possible. And at some point, the doctor said, yes, a C-section should be done. And so we did it. And it was kind of strange because I thought once they decided to do a C-section, it might be, 5 or 10 minutes or something. They'd come in, all the doctors, running around or whatever. But it was not like that at all. Once they decided to do a C-section, it was immediate, very immediate. Doctors, nurses, more doctors, anesthesiologists, everything, they were all right there in our room all of a sudden. and they decide to wheel her down to the operating room. And that sense of urgency, the fact that we went from just having a normal delivery and trying to push and trying to get the baby out to suddenly needing a C-section, and the fact that so many doctors and nurses all of a sudden started swarming around and it seemed very urgent, kind of got me worried a little bit. But they took her down to the emergency room, and it was crazy for a while. It was pretty amazing to get into the operating room and see how many people were in there. I would have thought that there would have been maybe half a dozen people at the most in there, but there was well over a dozen, at least a dozen, I'd say. I didn't take the time to count. I was a little nervous and a little worried, and my wife was pretty out of it from the medication and everything. But there was a lot of people in there, and they were all running around. And at some point, I thought, boy, it looks kind of confusing, like nobody knows what's going on. But as I watched them closer, I realized not only was it not confusing for them, but they were in complete control of what they were doing. They all knew exactly what they were doing. There was a dozen people in there, and every one of them knew exactly what they were doing. They knew what needed to be done, and they were preparing themselves to do it. In fact, there was only one person in that room that did not know what was going on, other than my wife, who, of course, was medicated. And, she had the epidural, and she was really sleepy, tired, kind of falling asleep every now and then, waking up every now and then. But other than my wife, who was medicated, there was only one person in that room that did not know what was going on, and that person was me. 100%, I had no idea what was going on. And once again, I'm going to pause here just for a moment, let you know, my baby is in her bouncy right now on the floor. She's whining a little bit. The microphone might not be picking her up, but I am bouncing her a little bit with my foot just to keep her calm. That's how good I am. That's how talented I am. I am doing a podcast while bouncing my daughter to keep her calm and her bouncy. And I'm going to remind you of that several times throughout this program. You might hear her start crying, and I might not be able to get her to stop crying. And if that happens, who knows? It might be the first time in the history of the Todd Cook Show podcast that I got to, stop the recording and pick her up and maybe give her a bottle or something. But we'll see what happens. So anyway, we get in there. Everybody knows what they're doing but me. And the first thing I can remember is looking for a chair. I needed a chair. I don't know if I was going to pass out or not. Chances are I probably wouldn't pass out. All I know is that just in case that was going to happen, I needed a chair. And as I'm standing there and everybody else is running around doing what needs to be done, I'm standing there wondering if anybody even saw me there. They're dealing with my wife, they're taking care of her, but nobody was even paying attention to me. And all I could do when I got in there was look to make sure there was a chair. And the only chair I saw exactly one chair, and it was way over in the corner. And I remember looking at that chair, and it was sitting in front of a computer and thinking, if that's the only chair, that's not good, because that looks like a chair somebody else needs to sit in because it's in front of a computer. And I got kind of worried. Once again, I didn't think I'd pass out, but just in case, I want to be able to sit. I want to be sitting down. But eventually, somebody wheeled that chair over. They took me over, and they wheeled the chair over, and me and my chair met together at the head of my wife there, and they set me down in the chair. And as I'm sitting there, I could look over, and they had the little shiny sled thing that they use to take my wife, off of her bed over to the operating table. They kind of move her over there, and they set it back up against the wall there, and it's kind of shiny, and it's black. And the only way I can describe it is like one of those sleds that don't have the sides on it. It's just a flat sled if you're going to go sledding in the snow. And but it was just shiny enough where I could see kind of a reflection. And I'm sitting by my wife's head, facing her in this chair, and I could look over and see the reflection a little bit in this little sled thing. And I knew I didn't want to see what was going on for sure. But in this reflection, which it wasn't like a mirror, I couldn't see very clearly, but I could see shapes, and I could see movements and stuff. And I didn't know if I wanted to see what was going on for sure, so I kind of glanced over there and then glanced away and then glanced back. And at some point, I realized I couldn't really see what was going on anyway. I could not get enough detail, so it was okay to watch. And so I kept watching, whatever was happening to my wife in this reflection, because they put the curtain up, where I couldn't see over there, and I had no desire to see what was over there anyway. But I watched in reflection. But the main thing that disturbed me was how violent it seemed. They were pushing my wife's stomach, or they were, moving around or whatever. But her shoulders were like, jarring around pretty good. And at some point I thought, is this like a chiropractic thing? It was like they were trying to, do a chiropractic work on her, getting her back straightened up or something. Like, they're like really pushing and shaking. I thought, maybe it's a WWF or something, wrestling move. They're trying to get my wife in a leg bar or something. Or not WWF anymore. I guess it's WWE. But just the violent shaking of her shoulders and stuff, where they were like, pushing and pulling. I don't know what they were doing. But the main thing, holy cow, it's already 11 and a half minutes. I'm going to have to take a short little break here, and I'll come back and try to finish this a little segment here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go over the half-hour time. So don't go anywhere, but I will be back after a few short moments.
You're listening to The Todd Cook Show.
Hi, Todd Cook here. Do you like going out on Friday or Saturday nights for some supper and live music, but you're not into the bar scene? Because let's face it, when the alcohol starts to flow, those places can get a little loud and a bit rowdy. Sometimes to the point that it becomes difficult for you to enjoy your food or the music. Do you wish that there was a place that had good food, good music, but a less distracting atmosphere? A place that you can enjoy the food and the music, but still get home at a decent hour? Well, that place does exist, and it's right here in Wichita on the corner of Douglas and Hillside, or 110 South Hillside to be exact. It's called The Kiln. They have live music every Friday and Saturday night starting at 7 p.m. and ending at 9. The Kiln is a Christian-ran, non-alcoholic establishment that operates solely on donations. And they always have great food and great entertainment. And one of the best parts, you don't need a babysitter. You can bring the kids with you. So for more information, contact Mike through the Facebook page. The Kiln, K-I-L-N, and be sure to check it out yourself this Friday or Saturday night. 110 South Hillside, corner of Douglas and Hillside in Wichita. The Kiln, where they are always glad you came.
His lips are moving, but he ain't saying anything. Todd Cook.
All right, I am back. The Todd Cook Show at gmail.com is my email address. The Todd Cook Show at gmail.com. Now I am doing something right now, as I said at the beginning of the show, that no other podcaster has ever done in the history of podcasting. I am comforting a baby as I'm doing this podcast. I got her in a little bouncy right now. She's sitting at my feet, and my left foot is bouncing her up and down to keep her calm. Right now, it almost seems like she might be asleep or really close to sleep. She's whining just a little bit, but I don't think you can pick it up on the microphone, so you probably won't hear it at all. But she is whining just a little bit right now. But I am doing this podcast as I am comforting her. That's how good I am. Now, let's continue on with what happened with the birth of my daughter while we are in the OR. We're in the operating room now. And like I said, I could see the reflection of what's happening in the little sled thing that they use to transfer her from her bed to the operating table. It's black and shiny, just shiny enough where I can see some shapes and stuff. I can't really tell what's happening, but I can see it a little bit. But at some point, the most oddest thing in the world happened to me. They got the curtain up, so I can't see what's going on. I'm sitting in a chair. But at some point, the doctor reaches over the curtain and holds out a marker for me, a magic marker, purple, mind you, maybe a little blue, but kind of purplish. She holds it out to me, okay? And now I'm looking at this marker and thinking, why is she trying to give me a marker? This is not something I was expecting. And for a while, I thought, okay, there was the anesthesiologist that was sitting right next to me. And he had sat down to write something on a piece of paper. and I thought maybe she was handing the marker to him for him to do something, and I was almost going to tell her, oh, hold on just a second, he's sitting down here, he should be back up in a moment. But she's just holding this marker, looking right at me, and I can't tell what's happening if she's smiling. She's got the mask on. All I can see is her eyes, and she's got the hood, the thing over her hair, and the mask over her face. All I can see is her eyes, and she's holding this marker out to me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm staring at her, like just giving her this really blank stare, like, what do you want me to do? Am I supposed to grab this marker? Do you want me to get some construction paper and some glue and make something? Like, is this art class? Am I in grade school again? And you want me to make something for art class? What am I supposed to do with this marker? And they should tell you, if they're going to hand something to you like that, they should tell you beforehand. Maybe there's other people out there who've had, a husband whose wife has had a C-section, and they remember this happening. Maybe this is fairly common. I had no idea this was going to happen. So when she's handing me a marker and I'm staring at her, at some point I get the sense that everybody's looking at me like, what is wrong with you, Dad? Don't you know what you're supposed to do? What do you mean, what is wrong with me? Why am I staring at you blankly? Because you're handing me a marker doing my wife's surgery. That's why I'm staring at you blankly. How would I know what I'm supposed to do here? I have no idea. And so, I stare at her for a little bit, and eventually, for some reason, my hand starts going up, and I grab it, and I still don't know if I'm supposed to take it or not, but she gives it to me, and at some point, I hear somebody kind of laugh a little bit. Oh, he didn't know what was going on, and I hear the word souvenir. And so I realized, okay, it must be a souvenir. And so I took the marker, and I stuck it in my lapel pocket of these, disposable scrubs that they gave me, and everything continues on from there. But folks, if you're going to hand a marker to somebody during surgery, if there's a lady having a C-section and her husband is sitting behind her head there, you need to tell, and you're going to hand a marker to him, you need to let him know. If they gave me some scissors, I might have known they were asking if I want to cut the umbilical cord, or if, I don't know. There's a lot of things that you expect there, but one of them is not that you're going to be handed a marker. And so I stared at it for a long time, finally took it, realized it was supposed to be like a souvenir. They use a marker to mark where they're going to make the incision and everything. And then I guess they give the marker to the dad. Nobody told me that. How would I know that? This is my third kid, but the first time I ever had a C-section. And so it goes on from there. And at some point, you hear the baby cry. I'm sitting there and I'm looking in reflection. And one other thing, too, is kind of weird. As I'm looking in the reflection of that thing there, that black shiny thing, I see somebody, one of the nurses, crawling around underneath the table. At the time, I didn't know it was a nurse. I just see somebody crawling around underneath the table that my wife is laying on, having a C-section. They got it all covered up and it's all draped down, and there's the cover hanging down to the floor. But I can still see somebody crawling around on the floor on their hands and knees. I can see their shoes, and they're like crawling around. And I'm like, there's a part of me that wants to go, why is somebody crawling around underneath the table? What's going on? Why would somebody have to crawl underneath the table? And I later find out that it was one of the nurses, and there was one of the cords, like an IV cord. I don't even know what it was, but something had happened where it came kind of unloose a little bit, and they had to, plug it back in. And also, my wife had lost a little more blood than what was normal, and there's a little blood down there. And the nurse was down there cleaning everything up and getting everything hooked back together where it needed to be. But it was the weirdest thing to look in that reflection and see somebody crawling around underneath the table. But they finally got that all settled down and everything. And at some point, I finally hear what I wanted to hear the entire time, and that's the sound of my daughter, the newborn baby, crying. Now, normally, when a baby cries, you think maybe it's hurt, maybe it's hungry, maybe it needs something. But this time, the baby crying, all it meant was the baby's alive. The baby is breathing. And it was the best sounding thing I'd ever heard in my entire life at that moment, was to hear my newborn baby cry. All right, I'm still comforting my daughter. She's whimpering a little bit again here, but I'm going to take another short break here. Actually, I got to play a song for you. Yeah, I'm going to play a song for you right now. This is a song by Bride. It's called I Want It All. So here we go. Bride on the Todd Cook Show with I Want It All.
what you from me. I shall be yours the time. Love never feels regret or fail. Our love will never die, from the highest heaven to the lowest hell. I want it all. I want everything. I want it all. All of you and me. I want it all. I want everything. I want it all. All of you and me. You said you'd see the future, die to the past. Future is the present, and the present never lasts. Eternity is the now, and we shoot for the top. We go straight up, no, we're never gonna stop. Let us have big pain. Let us have big pain. You said many things that I did not understand. There's no time to explain, I'm part of your master plan. The why, oh why, tell me why today? Why your selfish arrogance has pushed me away? Where does that leave me? Where does that leave me? Every word I cling to, yes to all that you say. Over and over again, unable to exist without you. Am I too close? Am I smothering you? Pull me close, but cut me loose. I want it all. I want everything. I want it all. All of you and me. Lovers and sinners, losers and winners. When in the end we all are pretty pretenders. I want it all. I want everything. I want it all. All of you and me.
That is Bride with I Want It All. And now that song was brought to you by B&B Towing. If you need any kind of a towing service, you need to call B&B Towing. If you live in the Wichita, Kansas area, call Cheyenne Brown 214-4021. That's 316-214-4021. Any kind of a towing service, call Cheyenne Brown. This is the Todd Cook Show. Don't go anywhere, anybody. I'm still comforting this baby, and I'll be back in just a few short moments.
The Todd Cook Show. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. Do you live in the Wichita area? Are you looking for a great place for lunch or dinner? Do you love live acoustic music but don't know where to go? Try the Artichoke Sandwich Bar. It is located on the corner of Broadway and Murdoch in Wichita, and it is a fantastic place to eat and listen to live music. It is located on the corner of Broadway and Murdoch in Wichita, and what goes better with a sandwich than a cold beer? So look up the Artichoke Bar on Facebook today to find out when they are opened and what musical artist is performing next. They just celebrated their 30th year in business, so you know they're doing something right. The Artichoke Sandwich Bar, 811 North Broadway, Wichita, Kansas, where everything is okie dokie artichoke.
Charlie Brown's teacher is easier to understand than he is. Todd Cook.
All right, Todd Cook here. I am back after that commercial. I lost the business card that I used to do the commercial for B&B Towing. It was right here a few moments ago, but it was not during that commercial, so I messed up the phone number a little bit. But once again, call B&B Towing for all your towing needs. Anybody who lives in the Wichita, Kansas area, 316-214-4021. Now, on this show, I was going to talk a little bit about fantasy football to finish up the show, but I do not have time. I've got less than 2 minutes left here, and I could go over, but I'd rather not. I'll save the fantasy football talk for a later episode, and I'm going to finish up talking about the birth of my daughter. And once again, by the way, I am doing something that no other podcaster has ever done, or at least I have never heard another podcaster do this. I am doing a podcast while comforting my little daughter. It turned out to be a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was worried she'd be crying the entire time, and I'd really have a good show for you because you'd be able to hear the baby crying in the background and see how well I deal with the stress. But she fell asleep again, so I'm pretty happy about that. I'm going to finish up the show about talking to you about after the C-section, went so wonderfully. It was pretty weird, too. I remember in the operating room shortly after the baby was crying, it seemed like a few moments later, 5, maybe 10 minutes later, the one of the nurses comes around and they hand the baby to me. Actually, they come around and they invite me over to come look at the baby, and I go over there and look at her, after she's been cleaned up and everything, and it was just really something special to be able to see her for the first time and hear her crying a little bit. But then I went back to my chair and sat down, and a few seconds later, much to my surprise, here comes a nurse around the corner handing me the baby. And not only did she hand me the baby, but she handed me a bottle like I was supposed to feed the baby. Now, maybe obviously they knew this is our third baby, so I've done this before, but I was still kind of surprised that they would do this. Me come around, let me hold the baby a little bit, and then holding the baby over so my wife could see it. I understand that, but they handed the baby to me and they gave me a bottle right there in the OR. Now this bottle is one of those pre-made formula bottles, and I can't remember how many ounces it had in it. But I was only supposed to give her half of the bottle. But I didn't know that. They gave me the bottle, and I think they said something about burping her or something, but I can't even hear it. I was so excited at the moment. I didn't know what to do. And they gave me the bottle, and they gave me the baby. I stuck the bottle in the baby's mouth, and she started sucking and sucking and sucking, and next thing you know, half the bottle was gone. And so, and then it took me a little bit to try to remember how to burp a baby. Like I said, this is our third one, but it's been a while since I had to burp one. And I'm trying to hold it up on my shoulder to this newborn baby, and it wasn't working real well. Then I remember, another little method of, setting the baby kind of on your lap and leaning over your hand and patting her back. And I did that, and she burped just as clear as a bell. Didn't take very long at all. Put her back, cradle her back in my arms, stuck the bottle in her mouth, and she sucked down the rest of that bottle. And I leaned her over my lap into my hand again and burped her again. And just as plain as day, burp. And it was great. And then later I found out she was only supposed to have half the bottle. She drank an entire bottle. Been born less than 30 minutes ago, and she drank this entire bottle. And so it was pretty exciting for us. And, we're already over a half an hour. I usually just go a half hour. We're at over 31 minutes already. So I'll go ahead and end it here, and I'll save the rest of the story for the next episode. And I've said it once before, and I'll say it again. when you're doing a podcast or a radio show, whatever it might be, it's a lot better to have more to talk about than you have time for than it is to run out of things to talk about. And it seems like on this show, more often than not, I have more things to talk about than I have time for, but that's okay. I'll just save the rest of this for the next episode. This, by the way, is the last episode of Season 2 of the Todd Cook Show. This episode is Season 2, Episode 20 of the Todd Cook Show. The first season was 20 episodes. This season will be 20 episodes, and so the next episode will be Season 3 of the Todd Cook Show already. Can you believe that? I'm excited about that. I'm hoping for things to be a little different. It might be a week or two before I get the next episode up because, like I said, it's a Season 3 debut, and I want to make sure that it's good and different than Season 2, and so be prepared to that. But in the next week or two, get back on the internet and look me up. And remember, there's only 2 rules of the Todd Cook Show. Rule number 1, I talk. Rule number 2, you listen. Thank you very much.